Okay, everybody, welcome to Lawns Across America. And as you guys have seen the last time and this time, we're doing a little bit of a different format right now. I'm doing some interviews with some of my partners. I think it's really cool to bring them on because they hold a certain expertise, and there's a reason I work with them. And so it's nice for me to bring them on and let them talk about their products in a way that I always can't. And especially today, I've got the folks from Jonathan Green on. You guys have seen we started working with them last year. And when I got the opportunity to work with them, I was really excited because mostly, at least for me and from where I have come from, I knew them for their grass seed, and everybody knows the Black Beauty name. And I was like, man, this would be so awesome for me to be able to offer this to my folks. The thing I like about Jonathan Green is they're a family-owned business. You know, they're not somebody that's just in every big box store everywhere. They kind of are niche like we are as Yard Mastery. And so they really fit along with what we do, why we do it. And the other thing is their grass seed comes in smaller bags, which was important to me too, because not everybody wants 45 pounds. So there's a lot of really cool synergies there. And we kind of launched last year, and we were really happy with what we did and the results we got. And so as we started talking about this year, you know, Barry, who you're going to meet in a minute, was like, hey, we got all these other really cool products that we can offer that we really think your audience would like and would fit into some of the things that you're talking about. And so we started looking into those products. And some of these are things that I've been for years thinking about. Well, I'd love to have a product that did this or that. We're going to talk about that today, but I didn't know it even existed. I didn't know. So as you guys know, a lot of the things that I do, a lot of the things that I work on for Yard Mastery, I'm looking for something that is easy for DIYers to apply. So many times we can get products that we can get at, you know, at a professional type supplier or whatever, but they don't come in with a prill size or instructions that are just easy for a DIYer to digest and get done. And so that's what these products are that we're going to talk about today. And these are soil-based products that we're going to talk about. So I was really happy to be able to invite them on and their team. And so before we get going today, I'm going to let them each introduce themselves. And we'll start with Barry Green. Barry Green, you're a family, and you are the president of Jonathan Green. So why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself? And again, since you're part of the family there, family-owned business, tell us a little bit about the Jonathan Green company at the same time.
Well, I'll be happy to do that, Alan. And I want to thank you very much for having me. You know, we're big believers in DIYers too, and of course, family businesses. And I've enjoyed our relationship very much, and enjoyed being part of your business and helping your business. And I've enjoyed your videos. I've seen quite a few of them. So, but yes, we are a family business. We've been at this for 6 generations, which I guess is a lot by any yardstick. My great-great-grandfather was Jonathan Green. He lived in England in a time that we now call the Industrial Revolution. His connection to grass was that he was a lawn bowler. This was men joined bowling clubs back then, and we call it bowling on the green. They still do it in the United States, but he was quite good at it. And but you know, back then, bowling on the grass was basically like bowling in a pasture. And as a student of the game, he wanted a better surface. Frankly, I think he wanted an edge, you know. So he began to experiment with the grasses that were available, which were perennial ryegrass and fine fescues. And he was trying to make a better surface, but and he did eventually. But of course, being a part of this family business, I was taken into work. I started about 8 years old. My father would bring me in, and I would work in the warehouse with my grandfather, and he'd tell me these wonderful stories. And I remember very clearly him telling me that, because my grandfather was born in England and came to America later, he said that he was taken by Jonathan Green when he was building these bowling greens. And at 8 years old, my grandfather, whose name was Jack Green, would help him to seed some of them. So I always thought that was pretty cool, and it really stuck in my mind. But when Jack Green, when he came to America, his dream was to basically start the grass seed business again, a business that his grandfather Jonathan had begun in England. But we started from very humble origins. Jack Green sold to local grocery stores, hardware stores, garden centers, right around Kearney, New Jersey, which is where our first warehouse was. But we had another dream. We really wanted to be important to professionals. I guess maybe it was that connection to the Bowling Green. We wanted to do it here on a larger scale. And sod growers was what we dreamed of selling them. But when you work with a professional turfgrass grower, you have to have a superior product. Honestly, you can't be buying your product from somebody else, because the other company is going to keep the best products for themselves, the best varieties for themselves. To have the best varieties, you had to own them. And to own them, you had to go to the Northwest. You had to go to the production region in Oregon. And we created a company called Cascade Seed, which became our research and production company in Oregon. I have a lot of memories of sod farms. I remember my father and I walking sod fields together I joined the business. I started really at 16 years old out there selling, and I've done it ever since. But I've had some of the happiest memories walking those sod fields. And my father's still active today. He's 87 years old. So I don't think there's anybody in the turfgrass business, I'm sure of it now, who has I think he started in 1957. So from 1957 to 2021, that knowledge is going to be pretty hard to replace. But when you're dealing with sod growers, they're going to want a top quality product, and we wanted to deliver it to them. So we started to really observe, what is it they wanted? What were they looking for? And they were looking for natural color. They didn't want to have to fertilize too much. They were looking for uniform a plant so that it wasn't uneven or clumpy. They wanted it to take a nice cut. And these are all the things we tried to breed into our grasses at our breeding program. And the end result is, after walking all these fields and talking to all these great growers, and really observing up close what they were looking for, we were able to start breeding it into the grasses. And we developed grasses that were naturally darker green in color, so they needed less fertilizer, less weed controls. They had deeper roots, so they were more drought tolerant. The end result of this program was the Black Beauty, what we call the Black Beauty grass seed mixtures, which are now one of the leading brands of grass seed sold both on sod farms and at retail. So that was our quest. But I'll tell you, we learned one other thing. We learned that it wasn't just the grass seed, because we found that as important as the grass seed was, some sod farmers were successful and some were not as successful. And I couldn't wrap my head around it. Why was this happening? And with a further exploration and talking to people that I knew had more knowledge than I did about growing grass, because they did it all the time, I realized it was the soil was the problem. That there was different types of soil, different pH, different levels of microbiology in the soil. And I felt that we really needed to get into this. We needed to understand it better. And I knew we didn't know enough, actually. I knew we didn't have that kind of expertise. So I reached out to other important people in the industry, people that had that background, that had that soil science, had that education. And I asked them for help, and we have two of them on the call today, and Peter and Christine, and they really have given us or pointed us in the right direction to create the 4 soil food products that we have here now, which I think are really going to be important in providing people with a great lawn, because now we're not only going to deal with the grass itself, but we're going to deal with the foundation of the grass, which is the soil. And we pretty much come to this conclusion that if you have healthy soil and you plant genetically superior grass seed varieties like Black Beauty in that soil, you're going to have a better lawn. It's pretty hard not to. So that's my story. And I hope it wasn't too long, but
no, I like that. I like the progression, because it shows that you're not just sticking to one thing. You've mastered one section of lawns or one piece of it. And you're like, okay, now what can we do to get to that next level and that next level? And so going on the soil, and that's very similar to the journey that I've been on as well. So with that, let's introduce our one of our other guests. This is Christine Esdale. She's the manager of sales and marketing for Growmark. And so Growmark is the manufacturing partner for Jonathan Green. So Christine, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Sure. Thanks, Alan, for having us on. It's a pleasure to meet you and talk more about our products. So just to give you a little bit of background on our relationship with Jonathan Green, we began working with Jonathan Green as a manufacturing partner about 30 years ago. The first meeting was at a regional trade show in the early 1980s. Todd Pretz of Jonathan Green was exhibiting his grass seed products. It always goes back to grass seed with Jonathan Green. That's the base of their expertise. And we were exhibiting our fertilizer products. And at that time, Todd was trying to develop a private label professional fertilizer product line and needed someone to help him fill his bags. That's really what we specialize in as manufacturers at Growmark. And that's what started the relationship together with Jonathan Green. Over the years, we've expanded that as Jonathan Green expanded into the retail market. We've been fortunate to grow our businesses together. And today we ship a lot of their products into all three of their locations. There's Farmingdale, New Jersey, Kendallville, Illinois, and Torrington, Connecticut. So the products that we produce for Todd and for Jonathan Green include general NPK fertilizers, starter fertilizers, pre-emergent control products, blended. And then we also have seasonal survival fertilizers to get through winter and summer. We have some insect control products, as well as ice melt, lawn fungicides and lawn weed controls, and then grub and insect control products as well. Today, we're kind of really focusing on the enhanced Magical products that we manufacture for Jonathan Green. And what we do with that is we source that from what is widely recognized as the highest quality quarry vein in the United States. So we're pleased to continue working with Jonathan Green in this market, focusing on soil health.
Awesome. Thank you. We'll get to, I mean, you're going to have a whole bunch more stuff to talk to us about here coming up because we're going to dive into these products. I'm really looking forward to that. But before we do that, let's talk to our third guest on the phone, Peter Maybach, owner and president of M&M Consulting. And so you obviously are working with Jonathan Green as well. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Peter, and what you do for Jonathan Green.
Thank you so much, Alan, for the opportunity to be on here today. I have the wonderful position of being where art and chemistry come crashing together. And it's my job to try and do my best to educate clients. We work with over 100 golf courses, we work with a bunch of vineyards, we work with sod producers. And I get to try and explain, when most people fell asleep in chemistry class, what chemistry is and what it is for the soil, and specifically what do these elements mean to turf and to soil. So if you allow me 2 minutes, I'd like to get you to understand and be thinking the way that I'm going to talk later in the presentation about elements, because most people start to drift off when they hear the word calcium, magnesium, potassium. They get glaze-eyed. I've had the great fortune of talking across the country, and you know when you're losing an audience. So I have converted these elements into a truck, and this is what I mean by that. And this has paid me tremendous dividends in getting connection with do-it-yourselfers. When we talk about calcium, I explain to the end user that is either an F-150, F-250, or F-350 frame truck. And when I look at data from your soil, I know what you have. And the desire obviously is to have thicker cell walls. Why is it the frame? Calcium's role in the plant is to increase cell wall thickness. And fortunately, at the same time, within the soil, it breaks apart heavy compacted clays. All right, let's move on to magnesium. Magnesium is the paint color of your truck. And why is it the paint color? Because magnesium creates chlorophyll. When the sun hits it, it makes that green. So when I look at data, I know that if your truck is brand new and polished, I know if it's starting to fade, I know if it's starting to rust, and I know what element to attack it with, which is magnesium. Now let's talk about potassium. Potassium is the heated seats, the air conditioning, the radio. It's the amenities that makes your truck your truck. and you like it. Why is that? Because potassium's job in the plant is to move sugar from the leaf tissue created through photosynthesis down to the root system. Hopefully none of us ever let our lawns, except for Barry, go into reproductive phase. So we constantly shove energy to that root system for a beautiful top. Barry, when that plant turns from vegetative to reproductive, he wants to make quality seed. And we do that off of excellent potassium values. Now let's talk about phosphorus. Phosphorus is the transmission in the truck as the ATP cycle within the plant. It connects the engine to the drivetrain and makes our system move. Nitrogen is the size of the fuel tank. How big did we get it? Did we get a 20-gallon, 24-gallon, 36-gallon tank? That's the one that's easy to address. Now, here's the bottom line. You can have a fantastic truck, and it's sitting in your driveway, but it will not start. It won't move. It'll look good, but it won't move because you're missing the keys. And the keys to this whole system is sulfur. And sulfur is the chief enzyme driver within all plant photosynthesis and protein development. And we are losing naturally deposited sulfur from the loss of coal-fired power plants, 100% leachable. So I see a lot of data points where we have a beautiful truck and we've lost our keys. And we've specifically kind of addressed these situations in the products that we're going to talk about later on. So you will see we're trying to build a fantastic truck through the use of Jonathan Green products.
I love that. I'm going to have to steal that analogy. I'm going to have I love analogies because they open windows of understanding, right? Gets people to look at, and that was, it's going to take me a while to process all of that, but I'm sure that I'm going to get more out of it as we move on. And so thank you for that, Peter. That's awesome stuff. So Barry, I want to go ahead and we'll move into some things here and we are going to talk about these soil products and some of the pH products and how they all kind of have this overlap or synergy, if you want to use that word. But, you know, the biggest thing for me is see, I'm an old chem lawn guy. And so back to Peter's analogy, all we ever used was nitrogen, maybe a little bit of potassium here and there and some iron if a customer was upset at us for their lawn not being green. But we definitely didn't do things maybe in the way that we're going to talk about today. But over the years, as I've become more educated, because I'm always trying to learn more so I can teach my audience better, and I've started understanding soil and soil health, and I've started looking at terminology like rhizosphere and soil biome and understanding soil biology and microbes and things like that, and biostimulants, another word that I've really just looked into, and different biostimulants. And we actually use biostimulants now in our programs. And so because of that ability or that curiosity that I've had, I've learned to do certain things, and I've seen the results that we're getting with me, maybe not knowing all of the science behind it, but just trusting other partners that talk about biostimulants and what to put down. And I've seen the results that we're getting. I've seen how fertilizers are going further. I've seen how we're getting different color pops and things like that. Because as DIYers, we really just care about the color pop. That's really what we're there for. And so because of that, it's really made me want to go deeper into soils.
In today's podcast, we'll be exploring 4 of the soil products from the Jonathan Green Company. The first is Love Your Soil. Love Your Soil is designed to loosen hard, compacted soil, increase root mass and drought tolerance of turf grass, spur soil microbes to break down trapped soil nutrients, and it's rich in humates to help restore soil life. Love Your Soil is fortified with fast-acting gypsum, humates, iron, and amino acids. Next is the original Magical for acidic soil. Jonathan Green's Magical for lawns and acidic soil contains calcium carbonate in a completely soluble form that is immediately available to adjust soil pH upwards. Poor soil is often the problem in growing a great lawn, and calcium is vital to many grass plant functions. 1 bag of Magical has the pH adjusting power of up to 15 bags of limestone. Calcium in humates balance soil pH and stimulate microbial life. Magical for lawns and acidic soil is 35% calcium and is also fortified with humic acid. Next up, we have the Magical Plus soil food for lawns in acidic and hard soils. Jonathan Green Magical Plus for lawns in acidic and hard soil contains calcium carbonate in a completely soluble form that is immediately available to adjust soil pH upwards. In addition to the highly soluble calcium carbonate, this product is also fortified with fast-acting gypsum, humates, iron, and amino acids. And finally, for those of you with higher pH, we have the Magical Plus soil food for lawns and alkaline and hard soils. Jonathan Green Magical Plus for lawns and alkaline and hard soil contains sulfur and calcium sulfate dihydrate, which lowers soil pH. This is important for cell development and is vital to many grass plant functions. Poor soil that is hard and compacted is often the problem when it comes to growing a great lawn. When soil is too alkaline and compacted, air, water, and nutrients cannot get down to the roots and the grass will not grow properly. In addition, you'll find in the bag humic acid, fast-acting gypsum, and humates.
So with these unique products that you guys have, I'm going to use these products that we're going to talk about today. I'm going to call them soil first. That's just a term I'm kind of looking at, but that's really what they are. They're soil first products. I'm seeing biostimulants in these. I'm seeing the words like humic acid, biochar. I'm seeing some other things that have specialized purposes, like again, for pH. But the one thing that I'm noticing is there's this overlap all between all of them. So it tells me they're not necessarily standalone. They can be part of a full program. They're not one and done. So when we go in there, tell me a little bit, Barry, about why it's important to have healthy soil.
Alan, it's critical. It's everything, because without that healthy soil, you're just not going to enjoy a good lawn. But I'll go back to what I said earlier when I was working with those sod growers, and I started to observe that it was just taking longer for some of them to harvest their grass. I mean, it was the difference from 12 months at the fastest, usually in the sod field, to 18 or 24 months, which meant that instead of one crop a year, now it was one crop every other year. And of course, economically, that wasn't working for them. So I started to wonder why, and I realized that after asking countless farmers this question, it was the one that seemed to be tilling the ground more, turning it over. They seemed to be slowing down the development of the grass, especially if it had been done for many, many years. Oh, I remember all the words about hard pan and deep. I've talked to growers who were buying bigger and bigger tractors and more horsepower to break up that to subsoil is the term they used. They were going to subsoil, but it seemed that they were the ones who were having the hardest time growing grass. So again, I started to question why that was the case. And I started to really look at soil as, trying to actually figure out it. Obviously, no pun intended, it's more than dirt. There's a lot to soil. So what was soil? Well, soil's, as we know, everybody knows now, or everybody who's in the industry knows, is actually composed of sand and silt, clay, air, water, bacteria, fungi, and microorganisms. It's a living, breathing, dynamic system. It's literally crawling with earthworms, millipedes, snails, slugs. It's a very, I heard somebody say this once, and I really believe it to be true. They probably know more about the distant universe, the stars in the heavens, than we understand about the universe that is right below our feet, and particularly the top 12 inches of it, because that's where most of the life is in the surface of the soil, just as it is in the ocean. Where's the life in the ocean? It's along the coast in the shallow waters, not deep out in the middle of the Atlantic. You're not going to find a lot of life there. So the same is true with the soil. But what's doing the heavy lifting in this process? It's the bacteria, the fungi, and the microorganisms. It's those that break down the minerals and the organic matter in the soil, making them available to the grass plant roots, which the plants then absorb through what the term we use today is the soil water solution. Here's something. I didn't know this a few years ago, and as you said, Alan, I'm still learning. That's what I find exciting about running this business. I'm 65 years old, and I still have so much to learn. I learn every single day. I'm learning something new about this business. It's really, you never get tired in this business. Well, you may get tired, but you never get tired of learning. Here's something. Only a few years ago, I learned that a teaspoon of healthy, productive soil contains between 100 million and 1 billion bacteria. Imagine that. It's almost blows your mind. But I also I studied the earthworm. The earthworm plays a very unique role in the soil. They break down organic matter, they make it available to plants. The worms travel many, many miles through the soil. Healthy soil can have from thousands to millions of earthworms per acre, actually. It's incredible. Why is this important? Worms would be the natural aerators in the soil. This is important because air, water, and nutrients use these pathways, these tubes that are created by the worms to move air, water, and nutrients deeper into the soil profile. But we've also learned that plants can't just take nutrients from the directly from the soil. The roots. We've learned that there's other issues in growing a lawn, and these are, I call them master issues or overriding issues. One of them would be the pH of the soil. If the pH is too high or too low, the grass plants can't absorb the food. The food may be there, it's there in sufficient quantities, but the plant can't take it in. So that had to be addressed. And of course, that's what Christine has helped us so much with the Biochar product. But we've also learned that compaction is another problem. And it's a huge problem. Soils turn dense when soil particles are pressed together, reducing pore spaces between them. And this leaves less room and space for oxygen and water. And again, the microbial life, which is there, it's always there, but it's starved. It's starved because there's less room for it to exist because the denser soil doesn't leave space for it. So it's the real, to get down to brass tacks here, what we've done is we looked at each of these issues and we've tried to develop a product that addresses the specific issue. Now, the Biochar addresses the pH primarily. That was its function. The Love Your Soil, it addresses soil life, soil biology. But in total, all four of them, and you'll have them on the screen soon, we think that we've come up with a system and a program that addresses or will help to improve the soil long term. Now, this is not a one and done thing. You don't put them down one time and you walk away and everything's fixed. You have to keep using these products. You don't have to go crazy with them. And the exciting news is that actually when the soil is healthy and all the processes are functioning properly, you're going to need less fertilizer because the natural biology of the soil is feeding the plant. And not only will you need less fertilizer, you're going to need less weed controls, less disease controls, less insect controls, because everything's in balance. We have a saying in our company, I'll end on this note. We say that I've said this to homeowners because year after year, they bring in these weeds. I work in garden centers on weekends and they show me, I say, well, what did you do? Well, I put down my crabgrass preventer and I used my broadleaf weed control and it's still coming back again. I said, are you kind of tired of dealing with the symptoms of the problem? Why don't we deal with the real problem? Why don't we fix the soil? Once we have healthy soil, we're going to have productive grass growth. The grass is going to grow in so thick, there's not going to be room for these weeds. But they don't know that. They don't make that connection. And I think that nobody else, at least is, I'm not aware of another company that has tried to take on this issue as we have. I will end this with this. Remember, we believe in not only DIYers, but we believe in independent family businesses. And our products are primarily sold at garden centers and hardware stores. And I think to help those businesses, we have to give them a cure to the problem. That's why customers come back again. If you just keep telling them, look, just throw down weed control, and they never see a result, the homeowners get frustrated, and either they stop altogether, or they say, you know what, if the results are the same everywhere, I might as well just go to the big box store because they're a few dollars less. And I don't want to do that. I want to give my partners, my retail partners, a chance to provide real results for their customers and for their businesses, and which guarantees that customer coming back to visit many times. But anyway, that's so these products, as I think I might have mentioned already, were designed to get to the real issues, and the real issues are healthy soil and planting healthy grass in it. And once you've done that, chances are you're going to have a pretty good lawn. Or if you have, and I'm not saying you're never going to have to use a pesticide product again, but you're going to use them a lot less often. And when you do use them, they're going to be a lot more effective.
Yeah, no, so I love that, because when you were talking through that, so I'm thinking about, so my wife is an RN, and she is actually extremely educated in the body and body processes. And she talks a lot about the gut and having a healthy gut as a human. And she talks about that a lot of the ailments that we humans have these days are because our gut is unhealthy. And what is the gut? It's just full of bacteria and microbes. It's called the gut biome. And there's a thing called leaky gut. And if you cure your leaky gut, you actually can cure so many other problems. But standard medicine doesn't go after that. It doesn't talk about nutrition and healthy foods. Standard medicine goes after trying to work on the symptoms. But really, if you just use food and properly educate your gut to get your gut healthy, you can actually cure a lot. So that's why I love the overlaps. And by the way, I believe the creator made it that way. Found one system that worked really well and decided to use it in other places. So beautiful stuff. With that, I do want to talk now about calcium, because that is an overlapping element that I see in all of the products. It's in some of them, it's a little higher concentration than in others. But I want to go into that because I think it's obviously very important. Peter mentioned that it is what makes the frame. If I want an F-150 or if I need some heavy F-350 hauling, is that calcium going to give me that? So with that, let's go and talk a little bit about calcium. Christine, tell me, what does calcium do for the soil and for plants and everything else? What's the importance of it?
Sure. So like you both mentioned, what we're looking to do with these products is not address the symptoms of poor soil, but to really remedy the cause from the soil down up to the plant, and not the other way around. So we do that by starting with calcium. And I mentioned earlier that limestone quarry where we source our limestone. The calcium carbonate in that limestone serves to increase the pH in soil, and it does that by modifying the balance between acidity and alkalinity. So calcium is a micronutrient, a macronutrient for soil, or in other words, it's a nutrient that plants use in larger amounts than others, hence macro, as opposed to a micronutrient. So just like in our bodies, calcium is a critical component in a healthy foundation. And in plants, it's critically needed during cell wall formation to build strength. And how it works is that calcium is deposited in the plant cell walls during their formation. It acts as a type of cementing agent in the cell walls, binding adjacent cells together. And inadequate calcium during this stage, during cell formation, results in less stable tissue that can be prone to disintegration. So again, calcium is really essential to cell growth and division at the start. It also helps with root movement and elongation of roots, letting those roots reach deep into the soil to reach water and other nutrients. We have a graphic that we shared with you that kind of shows the different pH levels and the effect that has on root elongation. It's, a picture worth 1,000 words. So calcium also buffers against excesses of other elements and helps provide heat stress reduction. So it gives a little bit of a buffer in times of extreme heat as well as drought. It helps plants in their response to injury with those strong cell walls that they're building with the calcium. And it supports the root exudate increase. And this is kind of what a plant secretes into the soil. And that directly affects the rhizosphere around the roots and providing a healthy environment for those beneficial soil bacteria and fungi, the microbes that do the tiny little work that we can't see with our eyes. The challenge with calcium is that the vertical movement of calcium in the soil is very limited. Once the calcium is incorporated into the plant tissue, it's virtually immobile. So a constant supply is necessary for continued growth to get that benefit from the calcium. And since it's so critical at the start and during cell division, applications and continued applications are very important to a plant's success. And then also there's an increased demand for calcium when phosphorus is being applied to the soil, which is a common ingredient in fertilizer. So that becomes an insoluble bind of calcium and phosphorus together. And then the calcium is not available to the plant. So another application of the calcium is helpful, especially in combination with a fertilizer application. So the Jonathan Green suite of products provide the calcium to the soil in the form of that calcium carbonate, which is the key ingredient from the limestone. I hope that helps answer the question.
Yes, for sure. And that's why we're going to dig in a little bit deeper now and talk about each of the products, because again, they all do have that calcium. I don't want to say as the underpinning, but it's definitely there in every one. So let's talk about the general soil product first, because the other ones are more aimed at pH. So we're going to talk about Love Your Soil, and I'll put a picture up on the screen, and I'll also put the label up because I'm big on reading labels. I like to see what's there. I like to read all of the marketing materials on a bag. I like to read all of the things that tell you how to use it and what it does, but I really like to get down to the guaranteed analysis, because that's where I'm going to see some keywords that if I don't understand them, I'm going to go and research, and that's what a lot of folks in my audience do too. So I see that on the Love Your Soil, we have 21% calcium, 3.8% sulfur. That was mentioned already, so I want to get into that. And then 1% iron. As a DIYer, I like iron because it turns lawns blue, but I know that there are other uses for it. But good to see that. But I also see some words that I would call biostimulant words. I see the word humate and I see the word molasses. I love molasses. So I'm seeing those, but I'm sure I'm probably missing a couple other things that are here. Maybe a couple words that we want to go into that I don't even know what they mean. So with that, Peter, talk to us about the Love Your Soil and what's in it and how they all these elements work together.
Sure. Just to circle back really quickly about the importance of calcium, I have the great opportunity to be a member of the Amplify organization, which is under the Brookside Laboratories moniker, located in New Bremen, Ohio. And it was under the tutelage of Dr. Albrecht and his theory of soil that it was determined that you need to have in a soil parking diner arena, 68 of those parking spots should be full of calcium. 15% approximately should be full of magnesium, and depending on the crop, 3 to 5% of those diner parking spots should be full of potassium. If you have that ratio around your diner or around your root hair, you're going to create and maximize turf or production. You're going to maximize vineyard production. There's only a couple things that don't work at that ratio of 68, 15, and let's just say 4. So when it comes to looking at the label, when you see 21%, we are directly attacking our truck frame. We're directly trying to increase the turgidity, the stiffness of what we're doing. And with a little bit of sulfur in there, we've located our keys that we've been missing for about a week. We found our truck key to start that. All right. Now, when it comes to the humate additive and then the molasses additive, our sole responsibility as turf managers, turf producers, or actually just growing food to feed 13 billion people, our sole job is to make sure that our what you call the rhizosphere right up top is in the best shape possible to give us what we need as far as either food, fuel, or fiber. Those are the 3 most important things we do. And if that top 6 to 10 inches is incorrect, we're not going to maximize production. So how do we feed the microbes? Microbes are down there and they're waiting to do one thing, and that is consume carbon and release nitrogen. It's the carbon to nitrogen cycle. Things help them along to do that. And one is short chain sugars. All right. And that's what molasses. So we're going to quickly talk about molasses. When you throw down a short chain sugar, you spike that microbial population. It's like, hey, look, there is a block party down the street and let's go. But by the time that all the neighbors get to the block party, all the food is gone because it was a short chain sugar. And they have massed and ramped up in numbers like crazy. So when they get there, there's no food, no drink, nothing. What are they left to eat? They have to eat thatch. That's their job. Their job is to consume. They got fooled on the party walk, but now they're going to eat thatch. And that's the C to N cycling. All right. Now let's talk about the humate. It's another carbon source because there's a whole chemistry portion dedicated to carbon. And it's a difficult class. Everybody probably here took it. But that element is why we're here. It's who we are, and it's what turf, and it's what everything that we consume is pretty much carbon. So when you throw down a carbon, you're trying to spur on a little more microbial activity and give them a home. In this case, we're giving them a home to come in and ramp up production. So short chain sugar molasses increases populations. Humates increase and give them a home to kind of hang out and consume a little bit. But the ultimate goal is to increase carbon and nitrogen cycling. And that's what the portions of that Love Your Soil does. Gives us a truck frame, gives us the keys, ramps up microbial populations, and gives them a home.
So how often, and I'm not sure who wants to answer this one, but so how often would I want to throw down Love Your Soil? Is it spring and fall? Is it every 4 weeks, twice a year? What's a good, application frequency on that product using labeled rates? So
for sure, if you twice a year, in my opinion, and it's varying by the type of soil you're standing on. If you're standing on a soil on the beachfront, oceanfront area, it's constantly running away from you through leaching. It's very difficult to hold on to calcium. It's not as soluble as sulfur, but you're constantly fighting an uphill battle. When you come inland a little bit and you have, and specifically, Alan, I'm talking Mississippi River east. Okay, it's very important to delineate that, because one thing on the truck we didn't get a chance to talk about is hydrogen. And hydrogen on the soil colloid is rust for that truck. So we don't want rust. And east of the Mississippi, we tend to rust, all right, because of leaching and things disappear from us. So twice a year, and you're going to maintain your calcium levels. You're going to maintain your key level, because 3 things are 100% water soluble: potassium, sulfur, and nitrate. And if you don't replace them, your lawn quality will go down, down, down. And so it's important to understand what happens so that you don't get behind the curve.
Explain to me again about this east of the Mississippi versus west. Let me make sure I get clarity on that.
Sure. So east of the Mississippi, we are blessed with, on the average, of anywhere from 30 to 50 inches of rainfall. Okay. And when rain comes, it takes away our carbonates. It takes away our holding capacity at the surface. It naturally wants to age our soils. Okay. It's a tremendous leaching ability. When we get west of the Mississippi, evapotranspiration, or moisture out of the earth, is generally greater than moisture into the earth. So when moisture leaves the earth, it brings up all the salts. It brings up all the carbonates. It's why when you fly west and you look out the window of the airplane, you see a white ring around all the lakes. That's why rainfall doesn't deposit near as dramatically as it does east of the Mississippi.
Interesting.
So it's very important to know where you are and what of these products to choose to fix your situation. And a long time ago, I was so happy to hear what you said with your wife. A smart man told me that the soil is the plant's stomach, and whatever is in that stomach is going to maintain and create something for either appearance or consumption. So you better make sure that stomach is right.
100%. All right, good stuff. So, we could probably carry this on for hours and hours because I'm learning. You're giving me a lot of good things to research now. So let's move on to pH discussion, because that's a big one with DIYers. And you guys have 3 products we're going to talk about here through the pH. We have Magical, we have Magical Plus, and those are for acidic soils. And then we have Magical Plus for alkaline soils. And we'll go into each one of those. But before we do that, Christine, tell me a little bit about acidic soil, and or actually first tell me a little bit about pH in general. So what is pH in the soil, and why do we care about it?
Sure. And this will probably echo a lot of what Peter is saying. So pH is an abbreviation for potential hydrogen. It's a measure of the quantity of hydrogen present in the soil. And as the amount of hydrogen in the soil increases, conversely, the soil pH reading decreases, thus becoming more acidic. So overall soil pH is a major factor in nutrient availability. It allows for the most efficient use of applied and soil stored nutrients at an ideal pH level. It also promotes that beneficial microbial activity that we've been talking about. It promotes a good porous soil structure. And then overall turf vigor or health of the plant, the turf plant, the grass plant itself. So in low soil pH, which is considered acidic soil or on the pH scale below a 6.0, you're going to see some issues in the soil health and the plant itself. You'll start to see a decrease in the microbial and bacterial activity, a decrease in the turf grass vigor and strength, a decrease in the macronutrient availability, those nutrients that are used most by the plant, they won't be as available to the plant to uptake. You'll also see an increase in thatch on the surface, and then an increase in the available aluminum at the root zone, which can be toxic to the plant. You'll see a decrease in the water infiltration, letting that water get through the entire soil profile. And then the low levels of calcium and or magnesium are a result of that as well. And we've talked about how calcium and magnesium benefit the soil or the truck body. So conversely, high soil pH, which you're seeing, west of the Mississippi, is an alkaline soil with a pH scale of 7.2 or above. And that will cause a significant decrease in those micronutrients used less by the plant, but still important. So that would include some iron, zinc, boron, magnesium, and micronutrients like that, which are still critically important to the plant. You also develop a higher salt content, poor draining soil, and overall this starts to occur naturally in any landscape that's got a high parent material that's limestone. So that will affect the organic pH level, as well as areas where you're going to see less rainfall, just as Peter was talking about. That rainfall can definitely affect the pH and the soil acidity or alkalinity.
So, and you're teaching me something because again, you guys know, you don't know a lot more than I do, and this is good. So I want to go back to this east and west of the Mississippi because I guess I've heard people talk about this in other ways and it's never clicked in my mind, which is good. That's why I told you I'm looking forward to doing this. So could we say in a very general way that east of the Mississippi, we mostly see acidic soil, and west of the Mississippi, we mostly see alkaline soil? Now, I realize there's going to be pockets where ice age changed things or whatever. But for the most part, could we say that?
Yes.
And so that's why we talk about if somebody doesn't have even a soil test or anything else, they could just get the product they need based on where they live, east or west of the Mississippi.
Yes.
Okay. And then love your soil, that can be used on either side. That's kind of the general, or did we want to keep that at one side or the other for the most part?
It's very soil test dependent, but generally can be utilized, east and west. There's no doubt. There's no doubt.
So it's more of the general purpose. And then these other ones we're going to go into are more specifically purposed. Okay.
We always stress the importance of a soil pH above everything else. It says it on the label: in the absence of a soil test, which is the preferred data source, here's an application rate. But that is really the critical first step, is a soil pH test.
Yeah. And we recommend soil testing for sure. The way I talk about it, we have a soil test that we utilize. One of the things I've talked about is with DIYers that I'm working with a lot of times when they're new, if I try to tell them to take a soil test right away, they get this data blitz that it's a little bit much for somebody. And so what I try to do is give them some simple tools like, why don't you just learn how to apply fertilizer first? Then you're confident with actually spreading something on the lawn. Learn how to spray a liquid. And then once you feel comfortable about walking your land and actually making an application, then you're like, okay, now I'll go for some data. So, and that's why I love what I do, because I really like to be able to help people in that way. I want to give them a little bit of confidence so they get hooked on the rest. And that's when they get the soil test, and that's when they start getting crazy. So good stuff. So I want to go into acidic soil first. So for everybody watching, acidic soil, if you're looking at a pH chart, it's the lower end. It's when your pH is low. And that is what we call acidic soil. So typically in the past, before I met you guys and found out about these products, if I had somebody coming to me saying, what do I do for acidic soil? I would tell them to go to the store and get lime. Now that can mean a lot of different things. If they get the wrong one, they might need to wear a breather. There can be a lot of dust. Even if they're getting pelletized lime, some pellets can be a 1/2 inch and some can be 1/8 of an inch. And it's rocks. It's literally rocks, and it breaks their $30 Scott spreader. So it's been a challenge. And plus, not everybody has a truck that they can carry 700 pounds of lime in it, because that's where the recommendations will often come in is, well, you need 100 pounds per thousand. We're not doing all that now. They got to do that. So they're applying 10 pounds per thousand for 10 weeks in a row. It becomes a challenge. So that's why these products are exciting to me. But before we go into them, just real quick, Christine, tell me, what would lime do for pH? If we're just talking about general recommendation, which again, I don't want anybody to think I'm against using lime. I'm not. I'm just always looking for something that's more convenient for my audience. But Christine, tell me, what does lime typically do to help raise pH?
So what it would do is that calcium carbonate is used to raise soil pH. So as the calcium carbonate dissolves in the soil water, it forms carbon dioxide and water. And thus it clears the hydrogen from the exchange sites, which makes it more available to holding sites for nutrients. So in essence, it's basically, getting that hydrogen out of the way and making the other nutrients available to the plant. And then, as very often says, if you don't have the proper pH, you can basically say goodbye to a great looking lawn. And that's really what it comes down to. It is that important. It is the building block of everything else that grows above the soil profile.
Yeah, and I agree. That's the leaky gut. You can eat all the best foods, but if you have a leaky gut, they don't do any good for you. You can't absorb the nutrients. So that's kind of how I look at it that way. Why does it usually take so much lime? Why is it 100 pounds per thousand to move the pH even a small amount?
Well, at that level, it's often like an agricultural lime or that traditional dusty white lime that people are thinking about. So that can take, like you said, the 50 pounds per thousand, or that's even 40, 43, 44, 45 bags per acre. And that's really not practical for the average homeowner to apply. It's dirty, it's dusty, and it can take 10 to 18 months to move that pH on the scale. That's a long time to wait. So what we've done with the calcium carbonate is grind it down to 45 microns, which is equivalent to like a talc powder. That's how fine it is. Now that obviously is pretty dusty. So at that point, we apply a lignin sulfonate as a binder, and we're using about 3 to 4 times as much lignin sulfonate as is the industry standard. And then we pelletize the lime further from there, and we pelletize that into a homogeneous pellet size. So it's evenly distributed. Every pellet is the same size. It goes through the spreader nicely. It's a nice, evenly coated pellet. That said, once we've compacted it all down, you put it into the soil, you distribute it with a spreader and water it in. It goes back to that immediately soluble form. So it goes right into the soil. So because of that 45 micron grind, that talcum powder origin that we start with, it's immediately available to the plant once it's watered into the soil. And that grind size really has a direct correlation to the pH, the speed of the pH correction. So again, with that old-fashioned pelletized lime, you could be looking at next year to see even, a 1 point jump on your pH scale. When you're applying this highly soluble and available source of calcium carbonate to the soil, you could see a pH adjustment in the same season that it's applied. And that pH scale that we're talking about, between a 4.5 and a 7 on the pH scale, each of those points are logarithmic or a scale of 10. So even a jump from a 5.5 to a 5.6, 5.7, that's a significant increase in the soil health. So it's certainly worthwhile to get that pH adjusted as quickly as possible. And then through continued applications of the products, you can maintain that pH level once you're keeping it there for overall soil health.
So that's essentially the Biochar, right? What you were just describing. And
Correct.
So that's what I wondered, because it does talk about how it rapidly increases soil pH. And I was like, how does it do that? But it makes sense that a large rock takes a lot longer to break down than a super small, tiny little particle. It just gets into the soil quicker, so it can do the work that it's supposed to do a lot faster.
Exactly. In the season that it's applied. And that makes all the difference for DIYers and people that want to do it right and see results. Nobody wants to spend their weekends putting down products and get no results from it. So
I'm looking at the Biochar label here, and I see obviously the calcium there, but I'm seeing also, again, we have some humic acid in here, and we have some other ingredients. What do those do along in the mix?
So your humic acid is going to function as it's a carbon source. It's derived from leonardite coal. which has been decomposed over years and years and years and years, hundreds of thousands of years. And that becomes a carbon source, and it's food for those beneficial microbes in the soil. And then there's also a binder in there that, as I talked about, that keeps the dust down to virtually minimal. So those two key ingredients, while they're on the label in fairly small quantities, they're really powerful in terms of making the calcium in the product available to the soil and to the plant, as well as making it easier to use, more pleasant of an experience.
Very important. Peter, did you want to add something?
I get to speak with a lot of different clients, and one of the best images I can paint for them is I said, listen, I have them hold their hand out. And then I have them imagine that these are root hairs. And then I have them go to their truck and I have them pop the battery cap off and stick their finger. This is all, fictitiously, but I say, imagine your root hair down inside the battery terminal where the acid is. You're expecting your lawn to live through the summer with its roots down in there. You can't hold it in there for 3 seconds. Your roots don't want to stay in there. So until you negate the acidity or the hydrogen, your roots are going to stay right at the surface, prone to drought, prone to damage, prone to everything that you don't want, everything you're fighting. And once they get the visual of, oh my gosh, that's really bad, then they get, okay, let's do some limestone.
Yeah, and that would make sense why you have more of a thatch problem when you have an acidic soil, because all your roots are up top anyway.
Exactly right. They are not cycling.
So with that, then, how many applications would we want? And I know this is, again, dependent on the soil test, but just generally speaking, somebody that's got a low pH that wants to move the needle, how many applications per year, and in what seasons would we recommend of Magical?
So a product like this can be applied multiple times in 1 year. And again, not to beat a dead horse, but we always go back to that soil pH test first. In the absence of that, you could apply this 2 to 3 times per year, and you'll have the rates on that label on the back. So you calibrate your spreader, you make sure that that's working correctly, and then you can put it down at a rate of 4.5 pounds per 1,000 square feet. So that's going to give you a good application rate. The frequency and how many times you apply it is really what's going to affect your pH. So for example, if you're at a nice soil pH level of a 6.2, you pretty much just want to do a maintenance rate once per year. It's fine. On average, if you're trying to raise your soil pH, you're probably starting at a 5.5, 5.6. You could do that 4.5 per 1,000 square feet every other month. And just keep bumping that scale up significantly. So again, well, it does depend on your soil test results. In the absence of that, or if you're not quite sure where you fall, that's a good rule of thumb that you can apply it depending. Start with the 2 times per year. You can up the frequency from there, and you can do as often as every other month.
And one other question with this: would it be a good idea to apply this at the same time as my fertilizer? Not mix it in the hopper together, but apply this product when I'm going to fertilize, or should I keep it separated?
You could do it in subsequent passes. It's just recommended that you make sure each one is watered in sufficiently first, so it has the time to go to work. I would, it's ideal that you might want to put down your Magical first to make sure that soil pH gets adjusted, and then the fertilizer that's being applied is going to work more efficiently. So start, a couple of weeks beforehand. That would be great. Not everyone has the time to do that, so you could layer them.
Oh, my folks do. They like to throw something down every weekend. So
perfect.
So yeah, I get it. So throw the Magical down 1 week, water it in, let it start to work. And then a week or two later, hit your fert. And I always tell people too, look at your lawn. If your lawn is responding, it looks good. It's the same thing with people. How do you feel? Well, I feel better. Okay, good. That's the best test. So if the lawn is starting to look good, it means you're on a good track. So yeah, go ahead, Barry.
I can just add just a personal experience here, because I've worked in stores for so many years, and having a product like Magical it's the difference between them applying the proper product and getting results and getting no results. Because when I worked in stores before Magical was available, I sold tons and tons and tons of pelletized lime, but you would get into a long explanation. Maybe they had a soil test and you were in the aisle and you were explaining to them, all right, you've got 10,000 square feet of lawn, so you need 10 bags of pelletized lime. Then I'd get the cart and I'd load the bags in. And of course, they felt bad. They didn't want to say they didn't want it because you were just giving them all this advice. And then maybe they would leave, and maybe I'd go take a break to get a drink of water or something. And I'd go a few aisles away, and I'd see the cart sitting there with the lime. They just didn't want to. They didn't want to lug 10 bags home. They weren't. So with a product like Biochar, one bag can do 5,000 square feet of lawn if it's the small one, or 15,000 square feet if it's the larger bag. And that means they're actually going to do it on a regular basis. And that makes all the difference.
Yeah, exactly. I want to make it easy for people to get results. And that's one of the things I love about these. Let's move on into the next product, which it's similar, but it's got some more stuff in it, to use the technical term. So we'll go to the Biochar Plus, and this is also for acidic soils, but it's got some additional benefits here. And we can look at the label and we can see, I see sulfur on there, which Peter had mentioned. We have some iron and some other goodies in here. I see humic acid again, and I see biochar, which is a wonderful buzzword that we have introduced to DIY in the last year or so. And so I love seeing biochar on a label. So Peter, talk to us about the Biochar Plus for acidic soils.
So the Biochar Plus, when you hear the term biochar, it's important to understand that the biochar mechanism, when that is created, they have millions of capillary tubes that are created. And the way that I can explain that to a lot of people is when you make a charcoal briquette barbecue in the back, and then you soak it down with lighter fluid, and you turn away for 6 seconds, you turn back and they're dry. And you're like, gosh, where'd that go? Then you do it again and it fills up and it keeps sucking in. And it's these capillary tubes that are imbibing the water and water creates life, and it's holding it. And so as those tubes drink, then therefore you have a storehouse of liquid for later, and it does a fantastic job. Then when you add in the keys to start your truck again, which is the sulfur of this component, you add in the calcium to enhance the environment for reducing compaction and increasing cell walls. That is what this product is directly aimed at doing.
And so how would I, obviously soil test, but how would I know if I want the regular Biochar or original Biochar versus the Biochar Plus? What would be something I would look at to decide between the two?
I hate to say this, but it's a soil test. And the reason is the sulfur content is so important. It is imperative that we have that there. And when you're trying to create life, these are the products that help that soil do that. And so without it, we just kind of stumble along. As Christine said, we just aren't maximizing production. So when you get these elements in there in the appropriate ratio of 68, 15, and 4, calcium, magnesium, potassium, your soils really do very, very well. So hopefully that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, no, I'm cool with the soil test idea because I don't want to act like I'm anti-soil tests, because I'm not, because of the fact we have an app that we built. And what our app does is it uses logic to tell people what to put down and when. And currently if you've ever done any development work, it takes a long time, but currently the logic that's in there is it looks at soil temperatures, because we know that, crabgrass germinates at soil temperature between 50 and 55. So that's when we trigger crabgrass control. It also looks at latitude and longitude to make some different recommendations. It looks at how long since your last application, things like that. And then we are now incorporating lawn size. So folks measure their lawn in the app that's coming in. That will inform the program. So we can say, buy this many bags. But we also have a soil test that we have created and we've been using for a couple of years. Now that is being integrated into the app as well. So this was perfect for here, because I'll know if the person lives east or west of the Mississippi, number one. Right. But number two, what I'll know is which of these elements are they low on. So the idea will be then when their pH is off, or if it's not or whatever, we can actually recommend the exact perfect Biochar product based on east or west of the Mississippi, if they have sulfur or need sulfur, all of those things. So we're getting there. And that's where technology can take the place, because in the absence of a soil test, like you said, and I get it why you guys are saying that's like, I don't know if I can make a perfect recommendations because we don't have a soil test, but that's where we're going to have technology solve that for us. So that's why I'm, again, excited about these products. It's going to be another year or two before I get that far down the road because development work takes time. But
I might add one thing, Alan. There was an economic reason to come out with Magical Plus, because before we had Magical Plus, we had Love Your Soil and we had Magical, and when we would go into the stores and we try to explain to the consumer, look, your pH is off, your soil biology looks like you're out of whack, so you really should use both. And then they'd say to us, well, maybe they wouldn't say it, but they think it. Wait a minute, I'm spending $50 on these two soil foods and I haven't even got my 4-step program yet. So it was just economically, it was a hard sell. So we determined that it would be easier if we could combine the Magical and the Love Your Soil into one product. We're not saying that it is as effective as the other two concentrated products, but it's more. My father had a phrase he came up with, which is quite effective. He said, when you use Magical Plus, you're moving strongly in the right direction. Because, as much as I believe in the soil test, and I do, I can tell you that retailers don't promote it as much as they should because they don't want to lose the sale at the moment. If they say to somebody, here's the soil test, go back and take it and come back and report to me, maybe they never come back again. Mm-hmm. So they want to sell them then. And if they try to sell them $50, they don't make the sale. So this is a product that introduced the consumer to the idea that taking care of the soil is important. And maybe this is enough on its own. And if it isn't, then we can talk about the more concentrated products. But there was as much an economic reason as a agronomic reason for doing this product.
Yeah, and that's always the balance we have to strike, right? Just to any of us, there's a balance between, you got to run your business, but then you also want to do what's right for the customers, 100%. So you have to, I call it street medicine versus book medicine. The book says do it this way, but sometimes I have to adapt in the streets because I have to take care of the patient where they are and in their current context. And so, but again, that's why I'm looking to bring technology in so that I can kind of take some of that out, and we'll get there. So, that's probably the biggest thing I've gotten out of this so far is that my technology is on the right path, because I'm going to be able to give people like dialed in recommendations, like plug and play literally, which is what we're trying to get to. So that is awesome. All right. I want to switch and let's talk about alkaline soils now, because we're going to talk about the other Magical product. So alkaline is going to be if your soil test comes back and your pH is high. And as I've learned here, that's going to typically be folks who are west of the Mississippi, typically. But we could have some outliers here and there. But let's talk about what is alkaline pH or a high alkaline soil. What are some of the challenges you might have if you had that, Peter?
It really revolves around nutrient availability and microbial health. If you're operating in an environment that is alkaline based, as Christine said, the salt load is generally higher, and salt causes water to move from low to high concentration. So you're dehydrating the soil all the time if you're in an alkaline environment. And then there's a reason that the pH is magic at 6.2 to 6.5, because when you look at the minor elements of boron, iron, manganese, copper, and zinc, most of those are available at that 6.2 to 6.5. And inside the plant, so I don't want to get too technical, but when you talk about defense against diseases, those are the elements that fight pathogens in the plants: boron, iron, manganese, copper, and zinc. They do a lot, but that's their chief, specifically manganese. And if you have a soil that is loaded with manganese, but a pH of 7.7, there's no way the plant can get it. It looks good in a soil test, but it's not going to be there, so it's critical. And it revolves, in my opinion, wholly around the ability to cycle nutrients and have free access to the minor elements that are there for the plant to defend itself from disease.
Yeah. And so that's where we talk about, I've used the term locked out. If your pH is at a certain point, the elements are locked out. So as you bring the pH down, those elements are in the soil. They actually then become available. It's not like you even have to throw anything down. You're bringing the pH down. Now those elements are now available. So that's one of the magic parts of this is fixing your pH. You get more out of your soil naturally that's there. And in the past, this is another one of those where when somebody had an issue with high pH, I would be like, well, you got to get elemental sulfur. Well, that word right there is just scary to people because what is elemental sulfur or citric acid? Another scary word. I mean, I like it as an adjuvant, things like that. It's in a lot of things we use, but it's just, those are kind of scary words to people. And so again, I like this solution here, and we have it in the Biochar Plus for alkaline soils. So tell me, Peter, talk to me about, I mean, I'm seeing calcium again. I'm seeing a lot of sulfur now. Yep. But again, I'm seeing higher humic and some other things. So talk to me about what's on this label and what it's going to do for us.
So what's going to happen is when you apply this product, when you talked about the term elemental sulfur, that's a great product, but it takes forever to be broken down by microbial activity and free up that sulfur. Here, when you apply this sulfur here, and when it rains, we're going to get a nice solution. And I always talk about trying to increase the strength of my Gatorade. When my grass is sitting down there, I want a really strong Gatorade solution surrounding those roots. I don't want distilled water for them to drink from. Grass roots and most plant roots, they don't eat with a fork and a knife. They drink through a straw. And the stronger solution I can get, the more healthy and they're going to imbibe what they need. They're very intuitive at getting what they need, along with the help from the microbial populations. But having additional sulfur increases the strength of my Gatorade. And when I increase that, what that means is I have more potassium, more calcium, more magnesium, because I tell everybody, you can run to the end of the Boston Marathon and you can grab a bottle of distilled water and drink it, and you will possibly die. Because without the electrolytes transferring your electric signal from your brain to your lungs and your diaphragm to inflate your lungs, you're not going to make it. You need calcium, magnesium, potassium, and so do all living things, especially turf. So when you add this product, you are going to increase the availability of everything else that makes that plant function.
So same question here. Again, absence of a soil test. We're talking spring and fall applications. Somebody just kind of, again, shooting for the moon. They should do a couple applications. What are we looking at and what time of year, that kind of stuff?
Spring and fall, in my opinion, spring and fall, no problem. Please do it. Please do it. Because again, back to the 300% water soluble, you have nitrate, that's gone when it rains. You have potassium, that's gone when it rains. And you have sulfur, that's gone when it rains. So that is what that is going to replace.
Awesome. All right. Well, we got through all those products. So I'll just tell you what I've taken away so far. I mean, a lot of things I've taken away that I've got a lot more content that I need to create around these for myself and for my audience, because we do have all these soil tests. So what's cool is I have access to all these soil test data. So I can use examples and then show people, all right, so if your pH is here, your sulfur's here, your calcium's here, this is the product you use. And you live west or east of the Mississippi. All right. So it's pretty cool. I'm gonna kind of do like my own little algorithm out of it for some content going forward to really help the audience. And I think it'll be really special for our folks, and they'll really enjoy it. So good stuff. I always appreciate it when I could get new content because I've been doing this for a long time. So it's always nice to find new things to talk about besides just throwing down nitrogen and, even though I still like doing that. All right. So with that, I'm going to do a little bit of a wrap up here. So I want to thank you guys for coming on. This has been awesome. I love the way you guys talk to in a way that my DIYers can understand, but you also do get technical, which we like. Give us some things to chew on and think about. Barry, I guess I'll go to you. Is there anything you want to talk about, as we wrap up here? Anything new and exciting you got coming out? Any products you want to announce? Tell the folks what's going on out there like that.
Well, I do have one in particular, and it's in the realm of grass seed. But as you know, that's what we've specialized in. That's where we started, we have a big development on Poa arachnifera. Now, Poa arachnifera is Texas bluegrass, and it's Poa pratensis is Kentucky bluegrass, and Poa arachnifera is Texas bluegrass. But we've developed some lines of Texas bluegrass that are very drought tolerant but beautiful to look at. And we've gotten around some of the problems that previously existed with Texas bluegrass, because we weren't the first to do this, but there was issues in the production fields. The plant would develop a cottony seed head. The yields would be 250, 300 pounds per acre, and nobody's going to grow it. It's not economically viable. If you don't get 1,200 pounds of seed per acre, nobody's going to grow it anymore. But we were able with the variety name is Blue Gem, and we have another one called Black Beauty Solar that are leading this group of Texas bluegrasses. Now, we Black Beauty, of course, is our leading program, and Black Beauty are tall fescues. And by the nature of the plant, Black Beauty varieties are deeply rooted, have the waxy coating, and so on. So they're very drought tolerant on their own. But we've created a super drought tolerant mixture. So this is going to be particularly good in high heat and drought conditions. Texas bluegrass is not just like Kentucky bluegrass is not just for Kentucky. Texas bluegrass is not just for Texas. Texas bluegrass can be grown anywhere in the United States except for the Deep South. It's still not going to be good where you are, Alan, down in Florida. But
don't tempt me.
It is still a cool season grass, but it grows on the front of the bag. You will see a map of the United States, and it shows you exactly where it works. But we're very excited about this. Unfortunately, we made a mistake. We only came out with this product in a 3-pound and 7-pound bag, and everybody's been screaming for a 25 and a 50-pound bag, but I guess that's going to have to wait for next year. But the reason I mention this is I think of all of our grass seed mixtures, this is the one that will perform the best in poor soil. So as you know, improving the soil is a process, and it's an ongoing process. It's not going to happen you don't throw it down one time and the soil suddenly perfect. And I really have to emphasize that, because I don't think your do-it-yourselfers, they understand this. They understand that that it's going to take time to make improvements. But once improvements are made, and if you continue to follow that course of action, you're not only going to have improvements, you're going to have a healthier, more attractive lawn. So something, but this grass seed mixture will live under the most extreme conditions. So as you're getting there, if you've never had success before, I think if you try this grass seed mixture, you're more likely to have success than with any of our others. So that's the story. It's called Black Beauty with Solar Green super heat tolerant Texas bluegrass. And it's out there now this spring for the first time.
That's awesome. We have it on our websites, and I look forward to seeing some folks growing it. I get people all the time in the deeper South transition zone that it's tough to make that choice. Do they want to go Bermuda zoysia and they got to wait in the spring for it to green up? Do they want to go, fescue, and then it has trouble in the summer? So I think this is a great product for folks, not the deep South, like you said, but those folks in that farther South transition zone area. Great idea.
A lot of times I'm surprised. I know we have something, and I won't get into Black Beauty because that was a surprise too. We've got a video on that shows you the aerial shot over the field, and that was back in 1996. I didn't realize that the first Black Beauty variety that was named Onyx, I didn't realize it was as special as it was until I saw that aerial photograph. But the same thing happened with the Blue Gem, the Texas bluegrass. I was visiting a sod farm it was actually the one here, A&W Southern Sod Farm in Springfield, Tennessee. And the owner's son-in-law had built a house right on the edge of the sod farm. And I had provided some of the Blue Gem to him for free. And now he was supposed to put it on his lawn, but he never got around to it. He gave it to his son-in-law who planted it. And I was visiting, and then they said, "You got to see this grass." And I went over to look at the lawn, and there was subsoil. There was no topsoil. These were sod growers. When they built the house, they scraped everything off and they threw down the seed. And frankly, I was expecting very poor results, and I was shocked. I was absolutely shocked how it had taken off in really poor soil. It did stress out a little, and right in the middle of the summer, because I turned to his name is Andy Mason. I said, "Andy, you're just not giving me any help here at all, are you?" I mean, you're going to make me prove this lives with nothing. But but a little bit of natural rainfall and a little bit of food, and boy, did it bounce right back again. So I got to see it in an area that's right there in the transition zone. It was pretty cool.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing our folks send in their pictures with it. And like I said, we have this available on our websites now, as well as all the Magical products and the Love Your Soil. Y'all check those out on yardmastery.com or thelawncarenut.com. So Christine, Peter, Barry, I want to thank you guys so much for coming on and spending time to help educate me and my audience. It really means a lot. That's what partnership is all about to me, is all of us learning together and growing together. So with that, I hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and thank you so much for coming on.